Hello and welcome to another edition of the Mayor Dan Paletko Show. I'm very pleased to have as my guest on the show today someone who I just have a very deep regard for, and someone who I've watched and has done an excellent job in public service, and that's Gretchen Whitmer. Gretchen, thank you so much for being a guest on my show today.
Mayor, I am thrilled to be here with you. I was privileged to serve with you in the legislature.
Thank you.
And I'm a big fan of the work that you're doing, and I appreciate the invitation to join you.
Well, thank you. I'm going to ask a couple personal questions. How are your daughters doing?
Great. So, in my first term in the legislature, I gave birth to my first child, and in the second,
that.
I gave birth to my second.
Yeah.
And that means those kids are now 14 and 16
Oh, you're
year
kidding.
olds.
And mine are 30 and 28, so my two daughters. So time goes by quickly.
Well, it does. And, when you have kids, I think it eliminates your patience for people that want to just play politics with issues instead of rolling up their sleeves and getting things done. And so I'm grateful. Even though they're teenagers, they're nicer than I ever was at that age. And they keep me tethered to the reason that I run for governor, because we need leaders who are thinking about how do we make this a state where our kids stay, where our families can get ahead, and that others come to for opportunity again. And that's what this is all about for me.
Well, I'm not surprised that they're fine young women because they take after their mom, so that's excellent.
That's generous. I don't know that everyone shares that, but yes, thank you.
Now, background-wise, both of your parents were attorneys.
Yeah, actually, both my parents were longtime public servants. My mom was an attorney in Frank Kelly's office.
Yes.
So she was one of Frank's top lawyers in the Attorney General's office, was a fierce consumer protection advocate.
Yes.
And my dad worked for Bill Milliken. He spent some of his career serving the public in that capacity. And even though they were technically from different sides of the aisle, my dad and mom both, I think, emulated what I think of as important public service and the same kind of qualities that you put to work every single day, never forgetting that you work for the people and always trying to work with everyone who wants to solve a problem. And that's what we talked about at our dinner table, and that's what I try to live up to every day in my public service.
So you kind of had a natural, through your whole growing up, listening to, and I think without a doubt, at least in my lifetime, for a lot of my lifetime, Frank Kelly was the Attorney General. But his activism and his work in consumer, he's just a great gentleman. So with your mom working with him, I mean, they really did a lot together. So that a lot of accomplishments.
Oh, that's true. Michigan was known as the best consumer protection state because of the work that Frank Kelly did in the Attorney General's office. He broke ground by expanding what the AG's office had traditionally done to becoming this fierce consumer protection advocate. And I think that's, unfortunately, we've lost a lot of that over the last few cycles, that we need an Attorney General who is, a fierce advocate. We need a governor who doesn't forget that they work for the people. I mean, all public servants are elected and put in place by will of the people and should never forget that that's who they work for.
And I'm thinking that your background in the legislature, because the last two governors did not come through the legislature, and I think that was difficult for both of them. I'll say that right out. A person who has passed away, but was somebody who he and I both started in politics together, Dave Paletko, and he at one time was the youngest state senator. I don't know if he still holds that, but he and I would go to lunch periodically on a regular basis because of our friendship. And he made the observation that the governors, especially Granholm, never understood the power and how to handle the legislature, and he worked for her for a while. And I think that your having that background is so important to be successful as a governor, and we really have had, the last two haven't had that experience.
The legislature does not work for the governor. It is a co-equal branch of government.
Right.
And they are all elected in their own right and come from very different communities. It's on the governor to set the agenda for the state, but also in that process, the need to use every lever of power in that executive office to make sure that agenda is accomplished.
Yes.
To build relationships with the legislature that's term limited. They're in and out of there so quickly. That becomes even more important and more difficult, frankly, to set the agenda through the appointment of cabinet members or appointments to the bench or commissions across the state. There's so many opportunities to make sure that we've got a cabinet that is full of people who have expertise, but also are reflective of the rich diversity of our state. And in just writing the state budget or using the bully pulpit, these are all really important aspects to governing. And when you don't have that legislative background, I think that makes it a lot more difficult to get things done. And so I do think that that's important. We've seen, for 8 years, for 16 years in Michigan at the governor level and in Washington, D.C., that there are a lot of hurdles that can come up if you don't have that background. And so that is something I think is important too.
And knowing you and having served with you, you are a very independent woman. So I sometimes get very angry when I hear people tying you into other issues or other people and say, Gretchen Whitmer is her own person. She is going to serve this state as she believes in her own heart. And I can't make that more clear. Having seen you operate, you will listen to the issues and the debate, but you're going to make up your own mind. So we haven't seen Gretchen Whitmer in the past. We're going to see a terrific governor if you're elected. So I think that's an important aspect, because I've seen some comments in the paper and in TV, and I almost wanted to get up and start screaming that this is not right. You don't know her.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think it's really important that we never forget. True public servants remember that they work for the people. They don't work for a campaign donor. They don't work for a political party. They work for the people. And during my time, I've taken on people in my own party.
Yes.
When money started getting pulled out of the school aid fund to backfill, other budget holes, I said no. I took on a governor in the other party when it came after attacking collective bargaining. I took on the whole Republican establishment when they pushed through a pension tax, which I am opposed to, and I am determined to repeal this retirement tax. But I also was able to cross the aisle and work with Governor Snyder when he embraced Medicaid expansion, and we made it a reality. I could have gone off to my partisan corner and watched my opponent struggle. I could have come out with a list of demands, but I didn't do any of that. I didn't play games. I just rolled up my sleeves and went to work, and 680,000 people in our state got health care because of that, and I'm really proud of that.
And you should be, yeah.
I think that those are examples of, I'm not running to defend anyone else's record. I'm running because our roads are awful. I'm running because our schools are in the bottom 10 in our country, and our kids deserve better. I'm running because too many communities can't drink the water coming out of their tap, whether it's because of old lead pipes or it's PFAS contamination. We have a drinking water problem in the state of Michigan, and because too few people in our state have a real path to a high wage skill, and everyone deserves that. Michigan was the place that people used to move to from around the world for opportunity and a great quality of life. We today deserve exactly that, and we got a lot of work to get there, but I know and I'm confident that we will.
It's so surprising to me that education-wise, we were always probably in the top 5, at least the top 10, and now I'm reading statistics that we're in competition with Mississippi. We have gone from the top 10 to the bottom 5, and it is atrocious. And it's like, well, your two girls are still getting through this process. Like, I was pleased that at least my daughters were able to get through the high school, and they went to the public high schools locally. But when you read the scores and everything, it's very troubling. And there's no way we're going to move this state forward if we don't have educated people that can fill the jobs.
Right. And education is the thing that levels the playing field for kids. No child selects what family they're born into, what community they live in, what zip code or school district that they are in. But everyone has a birthright to a good public education. I believe that's what makes this, this state what made us so strong for so long. And sadly, we've disinvested. We've demoralized people that go into education by attacking them and not giving them the support they need to be successful. We punish third graders who can't read instead of wrapping them around with the supports so that they can read. We're doing it backward, and you get one chance to educate a child, and we are failing generations of Michigan kids, and they deserve better. But our families and our businesses are counting on us to get this right. We've got a lot of work to do, but I know, Michiganders we have grit, we have family, we have one another. We can do this, but we got to get serious about it and stop this gamesmanship that we're going to let, some group with an agenda dictate the education of all of our kids. It's time to make that the priority.
Totally agree. And when you mention, here we are surrounded by the Great Lakes, the most fresh water. One of the things that troubled me, and in my short time in the legislature, I think it was Nestle, all the water they were leaving this state at a ridiculous rate, at a ridiculous price. And here we have people in our own state that don't have clean drinking water. And more than once with the local legislators in the area, we all had water campaigns to get bottled water up to Flint.
Yep.
But that whole tragedy of how that should never happen.
No.
Never happen.
I think that's one of the pieces too of governance by balance sheet. A budget, whether it's a city budget or a state budget, it's not just a numbers on a piece of paper.
Right.
It's people's lives that are going to be impacted.
Yes.
And the decisions around what happened in Flint around the water were driven only by dollars and pennies,
Yes.
not by what it meant to people's lives. With 21% of the world's fresh water, we should be world leaders in water stewardship and management. We've taken it for granted because we've been so fortunate to have this abundance. But we have corporate threats to our water, whether it's a pipeline in the Straits of Mackinac or Nestle taking water out of the ground that they hardly pay anything for and making a fortune off of it, selling it to other people, while people in Michigan lack access to clean drinking water. That's why I want to create a Department of the Great Lakes and Fresh Water that is dedicated to ensuring the integrity of our drinking water across the state, have a drinking water ombudsman at the cabinet level, shutting down corporate threats to our water and protecting it, because we should be the finest, we should be stewards of water.
Yes.
We should be the place people go to learn about water management. We've got resource universities, we've got brains, and we've got water. We should have a blue economy driven by the best science around protecting water.
And we always had this excellent reputation. In fact, the DEQ standards were far greater than the federal ones. And so we all took great pride in that, even though more than once as a mayor, I was sometimes saying, boy, these new standards or the standards you have will cost us. But in the back of my mind, I knew that was essential to keep these Great Lakes, because the rivers feed into the lakes. You got to keep the rivers clear. So I always thought that was what we should be doing. And it looks like, we just kind of obliterated that whole segment. And that's just, it just seems impossible to me as we look at where we were and where we are, the huge contrast. We need to improve these basic elements.
Yep.
Roads. Everybody around, I live on probably one of the worst roads in the state, so I constantly am objecting to the county because it's a county road. But the county's in the same situation that I am, that the special things that were passed don't kick in until another 2-3 years. And a lot of people weren't aware of the fact that a lot of the improvements that were done in the past were bonded. So between the pressure of those two, you can throw money, but does it go to bonding? And the legislature, the control that was taken place, I'm trying not to get partisan, but it was a partisan basis. All those taxes and the improvements, I've seen maybe $300,000 improvement. You can't do much with $300,000.
Well, that's right. So I unrolled a roads plan a couple months ago, and I was standing with the mayor of Southfield, and their road package had just passed,
Okay.
and it on paper looks like it's going to solve the problem, but the fact of the matter is, because our leaders have failed to fix the roads and to do it right with the right mix and the right materials and dig them up and rebuild them. That's how you fix roads. You don't just keep filling potholes or resurfacing them. Because they've failed to do it for so long, the cost of doing it right is massive. And so when the legislature passes $300 million for a statewide road program, the mayor of Southfield explained that paves one lane of one road 1 mile.
Yeah.
Their
It's
portion
peanuts.
of
It doesn't do the task, and this city grew up in about a 3-year period, so all the roads
Are about the same age.
same age,
Sure.
and so everybody is like, I want my road fixed. Well, we're slowly getting to it, but you hit the nail on the head. There is no way it can get solved without more money.
And so for anyone to pretend like a small adjustment here or there will fix the problem, they either don't understand the problem or they're just not being honest about what it's going to take. And that's why I started with a real road plan. It is bold. It is real. It can be done, and I will make sure it gets done, because we're all paying for bad roads. We just pay to fix our cars, where the government should be paying to fix the roads. The average Michigander spends over $500 a year to fix their car. The Detroiter, the metropolitan Detroiter, spends over $800 a year to fix your car. And every time we do that, it doesn't fix the roads. So it's just an ongoing expense that doesn't have a real solution. So I say, let's get it right. Let's just do it right and fix the infrastructure in Michigan, because our economy is counting on it. Our people are counting on it for the safety of families, but also for our ability to maintain our edge in the mobility sector. We're not going to be able to convince the world that we know how to build cars if our roads look like they're turning to gravel and they're downright dangerous. We also need to lay conduit so we've got broadband across the state for autonomous vehicles. So both of these are really important pieces, not just for safety today, but for the future of mobility and the future of our economy.
And a lot of people, I don't have a lot of open space, but I do have some. And I've taken new business leaders who were looking to locate in this area. And one of the things, there's a good cooperative effort amongst most of the western Wayne County and the downriver, that if a plant was to locate in Taylor, I think that's good because we all benefit. So we're not fighting amongst ourselves. But luckily they weren't from the area, because I dodged some of the worst streets. I was embarrassed that they wouldn't want to come to Michigan. So I'm taking a lot. If it would be like somebody, a taxi cab driver that's getting extra money, but I took them out of the way.
So they don't see how bad it is.
How bad. But the issues that did crop up is they asked me, how are the schools? Because they intended to locate and have their families. And so we had a issue regarding the schools. And so our reputation as a state, this is all interrelated, that you need decent roads. It's not a matter of just being the cheapest state with the cheapest labor. That isn't going to work.
Right. To be a state where people want to raise their families. And that's our rich legacy. When people moved here, whether they came from Kentucky or Alabama or Lebanon, people came to Michigan because you could get a good job that paid you well. You could get, no matter what community you moved into, your kids were going to have a good public school education. I mean, a great public school education. You could turn on the tap and it would be clean and safe, and we had the best skilled workforce in the nation. They all go hand in hand. And that's why these fundamentals are true in Dearborn Heights, as they are true in Marquette, Michigan, as they are true in Grand Rapids.
And that's why I'm so glad that you are running for governor. I know you'll be a great governor. I want to thank you for being a guest on my show today, and I think we covered a lot of things. And I'll finish with one last question. What is Gretchen Whitmer? How do you recreate? Do you get a day off?
I don't get many days off nowadays, but I'll tell you this: one of my favorite things to do is walking. My mom and I used to walk a lot. I took care of her at the end of her life. She died of brain cancer, and she was 59, and she and I spent a lot of our time walking and talking, and I do that with my daughters now too.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you and good luck to you, and maybe we'll have you back in the fall. So thank you for being a guest on the Mayor Dan Paletko Show, and thank you for watching another edition of the Mayor Dan Paletko Show.